Hello there, you creative being. My name is Burnett, and welcome back. If you are trying to use your voice, get your book out there, get your message out there through your book, I've got a great video for you on how to pick the book to read from at your book reading, or if you've got an opportunity to speak, which book do you want to kind of market or promote, even if it's just like casually promoting it and slipping it into your talk. There's a way to do that, of course, suggesting things, not quite subliminally, but, slipping it in there. So let's get to it. So I like doing book readings because I like drama. I like the flair of it all. Yes, yes. And as an author of several titles, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, which book am I going to read? Like, you're holding up like, oh my God, which one am I going to read? Which one will they like? Which one will they buy? Because that's important, because as an author, we don't make much money. Even the big publishers, they barely give advances anymore. So you got to hustle if you want to sell a book. Just saying. Okay, so seriously, if you are trying to do your book and you've got something that you want to share with the world, a message or something, like I am all about that. Like all of my books have some themes, some commonalities, some messages, something I'm trying to share to influence, inspire, elevate people. Right? That's what we're trying to do in this life. That's what I'm trying to do. So, it's a good problem to have if you've got multiple books. If you don't have multiple books yet, I encourage you to keep working on that. Maybe at least have 2 books, but you don't have to. Some people, 1 book is enough, and they can work on that book and they can write, promote, whatever. It's all on that book. But if you do have multiple books and you're trying to figure it out, it's really helpful to, figure it out with some kind of system or strategy, have some method to the madness. So you've got options. And this is just a simple test that you can do to figure out which book to read. So first of all, where are you reading? Where is this going to happen? What kind of event is it? Because that's going to impact, what people attend, so your audience, what mood they're going to be in, which influences the genre you might deliver. So for example, I write sci-fi and fantasy. My sci-fi is, futuristic. My fantasy is like I did one that's out of the woods, right? So this was my favorite one. So Goldilocks Meets the Modern World. This is going to be a different audience than, say, my metaphysical or spiritual books, or even perhaps my poetry books. So you have to really think about, like, who is going to be there. If I'm at a poetry night with spoken word, I'll definitely take my poetry book. Duh, right? Duh. And then I'll be thoughtful on which poems or poem, depending on how much time I have, I choose. But I might also, if there's time, bring this book because it's snappy. And I know I can pick a section and read it and kind of draw people in with just one section. Whereas my longer books, like the Chosen series, these, it takes more building up. So yeah, I could read a section, but I have to read a little bit longer of a section. So consider the event that you're at, the audience that's going to be there, how much time you have. So the event, your audience, how much time. So those 3 things so far I've given you to consider. And I'm going to just break down those 3 things. So the event, the audience, and then how much time. Let's talk about the event. You really want to be clear on what the event is, if you're speaking first or if you're reading first, because that's going to be very different. Those are going to look like very different things. So if you are first there as a speaker, you want to pick a book that aligns with the expertise or the message that you're trying to share. Makes sense, right? Whereas if you're going as a, reading from your book, and that's the main objective, then you're going to pick a book that speaks for itself, that doesn't need a lot of introduction. It's really going to be kind of fast paced, or at least inspiring, motivating. It's going to leave the audience kind of like leaning forward. Otherwise, they're going to be like, you don't want them doing that. Yeah, that's not fun. That's not fun. So let's talk about the event a little bit more. So know what the event is about. What is the theme? If you can tie into that, if you're talking to a group of women, for example, and it's an inspirational meeting for women, you're going to pick something that might inspire women if you have it. That's just an example. Okay, so the audience, once again, so I talked about women just now. Let's talk about the audience. For me, my audience is typically women, but it doesn't have to be. If I'm at a book fair, it could be anybody. Who wants to buy a book? No, I'm not quite like that. But like seriously, you got to be willing to reach out to a broader audience as well. But if you're at an event and you're there as a speaker or reading your book, you have to think about who has been invited to that event. So if you can figure out who comes, look at old event photos and look at, scan that room of the audience, who's there. Because what book of yours is going to resonate the most with whoever typically comes to this event. Otherwise, you're going to hit like brick walls and it's going to fall flat. You'll be reading, people will be like, again. And you don't want that. You don't want that, right? So let's be mindful of the audience and really think about it. It's like, who will your audience be? And then when you start looking at that audience and you start like feeling them out, looking at the room, through pictures, you can do that a lot through pictures, or if someone's taking video. Do your research. It's all online a lot of times, unless it's brand new. Then you ask the person who's running it. Hey, who is the audience? Who's your target market? Who are you inviting? What type of people? Especially if you're paying to go, you need to know this. That's valuable information so that you don't go in with the wrong information. Because you could have one book and each chapter is different. You may decide to read chapter 6 instead of chapter 1 because of who's in the room. So always know who's in the room as long as you can. If you can't, then you pick your best piece. But if you can, you pick your best piece for that audience. So now that you know who the audience is, you're going to identify a single person. You're going to create a character, an avatar, so to speak, of your ideal audience member who will be there. That way, when you're reading and when you're thinking about your reading, you're going to say, is that going to resonate with Sasha or Tony? Is it going to resonate with them? Is what you're thinking about reading going to resonate with them? Who is that audience? Now, time. Don't we all wish we could just have so much time to read and flower people with our favorite texts and just read from all of our books, but we don't. If you get 10 minutes to read, that's cool. If you're speaking, you won't really have that time to read. You can probably read a snippet, just as an example, depending on the event, if they allow you to do that, because they might consider that as selling from the stage or something. But if you have a chance to read and sell from the stage in that way, or just, lightly pepper it in, make sure that your book, the one that's going to be at your back table, make sure your book is aligned with your message and that you have time to pepper it in. Now, I talk about this in my book. When I was going through this as a child, I really overcame the fear of X. And I talk about that in my book, but I really want you to understand this. So you don't really dilly-dally, you don't stay on the book for that long, but you mention it and then you just move forward. But if you're there as an actual book reader, you're reading your book, that's totally different. Depending how much time you have, you pick the best section or sections to read. Something that's going to illustrate the storytelling, illustrate the message, help people connect with you, and make them want to continue reading and get this book all the way. Like, go buy the book, pick it up, download it, whatever. You want them to be moved to get the book. And my recommendation is you don't just stand up there and start reading. I mean, while you probably see that, think about how moved you were to go and like get that book afterwards. You didn't really make a connection. The story was interesting, but there's lots of interesting stories. When you're at a live event, your goal is to connect with the audience. Your goal is to be human, to be relatable, and to connect. And so when you're reading, you don't just, okay, I'm going to read from chapter 1. The sound of Alexis's guitar strings floated through the air. Dancing ribbons of color surrounded Stella. Only Stella could see the rainbow light showed. Okay, I would never read like that. Oh my God. First of all, you want to make the best use of your time. So pick something that's really going to get them in, right? But then you want them to feel it. You want them to be there with you in that moment that you created. You created that moment, have them in that moment with you, which means you might need to animate yourself and don't constantly look down. At least have some of the words, memorized, even if it's memorized as you're reading them. So you're reading ahead and you do that and you get the next few words so that you can look up for a moment and connect with the audience. But before you even open up this book, before you read the first word, you connect as a human being with the other human beings in the audience. Tell them who you are, a little bit about your journey, your story, before you start reading, please, because otherwise people will be like, who is this? Why should I care? But if you make them care about you, they will care about what you did, and then they will want to buy your book. It's like magic. So once again, think about your event. Be mindful of that. Your audience, be mindful of that. And your time, because you don't want to sell yourself short. You want to give them the most that you can in the time you have. And you want to make sure that your section that you're reading has a clean ending in the time allowed, and that you have time to do a short wrap up and invite to your table or wherever you're selling your books. Or make the call to follow me on Instagram at I am Burnett, just in case you wanted to do that. Follow me on Facebook, I am Burnett Sherman. But you want to invite them to do that, or, hey, my books are available on Amazon. My books are available back here at the table. See the big sign, or whatever it may be. You want to have a moment to invite them to take action. It's called a call to action. So that's really going to help you in having a better experience reading when you do live events. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it. See you back next time. Be creative and keep on writing. Y'all, I'm silly. I can't help it. Have a good one. Bye.